Previously in Part 1. The executioner stepped forward, his sword long and curved, the edge shimmering with lightning. The goat met Amira's eyes. "Do not weep," he said, his voice calm. "Tears carry power." The blade lifted. "No." Amira screamed, throwing herself forward. Guards grabbed her arms, but she tore free, falling to her knees beside the goat as the sword descended. Thunder crashed. The blade struck. And then, silence. A moment later, a blinding light burst from the ground where blood touched earth. The storm froze midair. Raindrops hung suspended like glass beads. Amira's tears fell onto the blood, glowing gold as they struck. The air trembled, and the ground beneath her feet began to pulse with light. From the blood and light rose a shape, human, radiant, divine. The chains shattered. The goat was gone. In its place stood Prince Alyamide, tall and strong, his skin glowing like bronze under firelight. His eyes burned gold, and his voice was both thunder and wind. Gasps filled the courtyard. "The prophecy," whispered someone. "The lost prince lives." Ebo stumbled back, horror twisting his face. "No. This is impossible." Prince Alyamide stepped forward, his gaze calm but fierce. "It is not impossible. Only mercy makes it so." King Baji dropped to his knees, trembling. "My son." Alyamide looked at him. "You feared the gods, father. But it was your pride that chained me." The king's voice broke. "Forgive me." Alyamide shook his head gently. "Forgiveness belongs to her," he said, turning to Amira. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You." "I am what mercy made me," he said softly. "The goddess speaks." The sky darkened once more, but this time not with storm. The clouds swirled into a vast spiral of gold and gray, and from their center came a voice that shook the air. "Let love speak where fear once ruled." It was the voice of Oya, the goddess of storms. Every head bowed. Ebo dropped his staff, trembling. "You were warned, priest," the goddess thundered. "You twisted my words for power. You fed fear when you should have tended faith." Ebo fell to his knees. "Mercy, O mother of winds." But lightning struck his staff, shattering it to dust. "You do not ask for mercy," said Oya, "you only fear it." She turned her gaze to Amira and Alyamide. The wind softened, warm and sweet. "Child of mercy, your tears have freed my servant. Let your kindness guard this land." The clouds parted. Sunlight streamed down upon them, golden and alive. The river of light. As the storm cleared, the people saw the river glowing like fire in sunlight. The waters ran clear for the first time in years, shining as if made of glass. Flowers bloomed along the banks, red, gold, white, all at once. Amira looked at Alyamide. "What will become of you now?" He smiled. "Perhaps a prince should learn to be human before he is king." She smiled back. "And perhaps a maiden should learn that mercy is stronger than fear." The king wept as he stepped forward. "My son, my daughter." Alyamide placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not by blood, father. By choice." Then he looked to the river. "It is time to return what was borrowed." Amira frowned. "Return." "The storm sleeps now," he said. "But it will wake again someday. When it does, someone must sing by the river." Amira felt a calm settle over her heart. "Then I will sing." The last light of the storm faded over Kimbula. The people celebrated for 7 days and nights, but none forgot the sight of a maiden's tears turning blood to gold. From that day, they said the river never ran dry again, because mercy, once born, never truly dies. The storm had passed, but its echoes lived on. For 3 days, the kingdom of Kimbula seemed to breathe again, as though a heavy curse had lifted from its chest. The air was sweeter, the sky clearer, and the river that once ran thick with mud now shimmered gold beneath the sun. But peace, like fire, is fragile, it flickers brightest before the wind finds it. On the morning after the miracle, the drums of the palace beat not for battle, nor sacrifice, but for celebration. The people filled the courtyard, singing Amira's name, their voices rising like the dawn. Amira, child of mercy. Prince Alyamide, son of thunder. Everywhere, flowers were thrown, red blossoms for courage, white for truth, and yellow for rebirth. Amira stood beside the river, her bare feet in the cool water. She watched the people cheer, her heart both light and uncertain. Kano stood near her, smiling proudly. You should be in the palace, Amira. You saved the prince, the king, the whole kingdom. Yet here you hide by the river like a ghost. Amira smiled softly. Ghosts belong to the river. I belong here too. Kano laughed. The river belongs to you now. Even the gods know your name. She turned to him. Kano, I don't want crowns or songs. I only want peace. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the sadness in his eyes. Peace and fame rarely walk together, Amira. Inside the palace, Prince Alyamide stood before a large mirror framed with gold. His reflection flickered faintly, as though a faint shimmer of light still lived beneath his skin. He reached up and touched his face, human again, yet something divine still hummed beneath his flesh. King Baji entered quietly. He looked older than before, his crown slightly tilted, his robe heavy with guilt. My son, he said softly. Every time I see you, I thank the gods and curse myself. Alyamide turned. Then stop cursing, father. Let the past sleep. But the king shook his head. The past never sleeps, my son. It waits behind every silence. Alyamide sighed. You did what fear made you do. I understand now. But forgiveness isn't spoken, it's lived. He walked to the window. Outside, Amira's song floated up from the river like light through leaves. She sings every morning, Alyamide said. Her voice calls peace into being. Baji lowered his head. She should be beside you, not by the river. She is where she belongs, said Alyamide. And perhaps one day, the people will see her as more than a maiden, as the heart of this kingdom. But not all hearts rejoiced. In the shadows of the royal hall, 3 nobles whispered among themselves, men whose power had once fed on the king's fear and the priest's cruelty. There is no place for men of reason, said one bitterly, when a singing girl rules the wind. The prince has changed, said another. He speaks like a god and listens like a peasant. Then we must remind him, said the third, that thrones are not built by mercy. If the river girl stays, Kimbula will forget who commands thunder. They bowed their heads together, their plan growing dark like clouds before another storm. That evening, Amira sat by her father's hut, the sound of frogs and crickets filling the air. The bronze pendant still glowed faintly in her hands. When she touched it, she felt warmth, but also sadness. Kano arrived with a basket of roasted yam. You've been quiet all day, he said. The king has called for a feast in your honor. Why not go? Amira smiled weakly. Feasts are for those who forget hunger. My heart hasn't eaten yet. Kano frowned. You speak in riddles. Maybe, she said. But the wind feels strange. The river hums differently. Something is not right. Kano glanced toward the palace, where torches flickered like restless eyes. You think Ibo's followers still linger? Amira's grip tightened around the pendant. Ibo may be gone, but fear doesn't die with the men who spreads it. She rose and looked toward the river. Tomorrow, I'll visit the palace. I need to see Alyamide. That night, the great hall of Kimbula shone with light. Torches burned along the walls, and drums thundered in joy. The people of every village came bearing gifts, woven mats, baskets of grain, carved masks. They sang praises to the prince and the maiden of mercy. Alyamide sat beside his father, but his eyes kept wandering toward the empty seat reserved for Amira. She will come, said the king gently. The river runs at her pace. The prince smiled faintly. Then we will wait for her. As the dancers spun and the drums roared, a servant entered quietly and knelt before the king. "My king," he whispered, "there are strangers among the guests, men who wear no colors of any village." Baji's eyes darkened. "Send my guards to watch them." But before the guards could move, one of the nobles, a tall man with a jagged scar across his cheek, stood and raised a cup. "To the prince," he said loudly. "May he rule with wisdom, or with mercy, if wisdom fails." Laughter rippled through the hall, sharp, mocking. Alyamide's jaw tightened. The noble continued. "And to the girl who weeps gold. May her tears never run dry." The laughter grew louder, crueler. King Baji rose, his eyes blazing. "Enough. The gods have spoken, she is sacred." But the noble only smiled. "And yet the gods are silent tonight, are they not?" The drums faltered. The torches flickered. For a moment, the hall seemed to hold its breath. Then, from outside, a sudden gust of wind blew through the open doors. The flames bent sideways, and the sound of distant thunder rolled over the hills. Alyamide stood. "You mock what saved you," he said quietly. "Be careful, or the wind will remember." The noble laughed once more, but when he looked toward the doorway, his smile faded. A faint light shimmered there, gold and white, like a reflection on water. Amira had arrived. She entered slowly, her simple dress damp from the rain, her hair tied with a strip of woven cloth. In her hand, she carried a small clay jar, water from the river. The crowd fell silent. "I did not come for praise," she said softly. "I came to bless what mercy has begun." She poured the water onto the ground. Steam rose where it touched the floor, glowing faintly gold. "May this hall remember compassion, even when fear returns." The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. The one with the scar forced a laugh. "Water and words," he said. "That is how you rule a kingdom." Amira looked at him, not angry, only sad. "Better water that gives life," she said, "than pride that burns everything it touches." The wind stirred again, stronger this time. The torches flared back to life. The scarred noble stumbled, his cup shattering on the floor. King Baji stood, his voice firm. "There will be no more mockery in my house. The gods have spoken through storm and mercy both. The age of fear ends now." The people cheered, and the drums resumed. But behind the crowd, in the shadowed corners of the hall, the other nobles whispered again, quieter, colder. "This girl's mercy is poison," one said. "She bends even thunder to her will." "Then we must bend her," another replied. "Before she becomes queen." Later that night, when the feast had ended, Amira stood once more by the river. The moon reflected perfectly in the calm water. Yet as she watched, ripples spread, though no wind blew. The surface shimmered gold, and a faint voice echoed, "Not the goats, but the goddesses. Child of mercy, peace breeds envy. Be wary. Not all storms come from the sky." Amira bowed her head. "Then teach me to listen." "The heart that listens," said the voice, "will always find the river's song." The light faded, and the river grew still again. Amira turned toward the palace, unaware that in the shadows of the trees, the scarred noble watched her with eyes like blades. The peace that followed the storm was not silence, it was the waiting breath of something darker. The kingdom of Kimbula bloomed again, its fields rich and its markets full. Yet in the corners of the palace, where shadows clung to the carved walls, whispers began to stir. No curse dies completely, it only changes its shape. The noble with the scar. His name was Chief Baraka, once a general in the old wars, a man of ambition and bitterness. The scar that cut across his face was a wound left by his own pride, earned in a failed rebellion against the king years ago. The storm had humbled him, but Amira's rise enraged him. A river girl crowned by thunder, he spat to his men one night. The prince kneels to her words, the king praises her mercy. Where is our honor now? Where are our swords? The men around the fire murmured in agreement. They were the kind of men who feared peace because it gave them no one to command. Mercy weakens kings, Baraka said. And if she remains, the river will rule this kingdom, not the crown. He lifted his goblet. Let thunder remember who forged it. In the mornings, Prince Alyamide rose before the sun, walking barefoot through the courtyard gardens. Though human again, he felt the strange weight of his curse still inside him, a memory of the goat's patience and the storm's fury. The people bowed when they saw him, whispering, "The cursed prince," but their tone was no longer fear, it was awe. Still, he could not rest. That day, he summoned Amira to the palace gardens. She came dressed in her usual earth-toned wrapper, her hair wrapped simply, the river's calm still in her eyes. "You shouldn't call me to the palace so often," she said softly. "The nobles already talk." "Let them talk," said Alyamide. "Their tongues cannot undo what the gods have done." Amira smiled faintly. "Even so, fear has a way of finding new shapes. You were a goat once. Now you're a man again, but the same fear that cursed you still walks among them." Alyamide looked away. "I feel it too," he admitted. "At night, I dream of chains. Sometimes, when I wake, I can still hear Ebo's laughter in the thunder." Amira stepped closer. "You're not bound anymore." "I'm not sure," he said. "Curses don't end when the gods forgive. They end when men do." She reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Then let's teach them forgiveness." He looked at her, his heart full. "You speak like the goddess herself." "Or maybe," she said, smiling, "the goddess speaks like a woman who has seen too much pain." Weeks later, King Baji declared a festival to honor the return of peace, the festival of renewal. Lanterns shaped like sunbursts lined the streets, drums echoed across the hills, and dancers in painted masks twirled beneath the moon. The kingdom sang Amira's name. Children carried flowers to the river, calling her the Maiden of Light. But in the shadows of the palace veranda, Chief Baraka watched her dance beside the prince. Every smile she shared, every cheer she received, was salt in his wound. "She charms even the gods," muttered one noble beside him. "She will charm this kingdom into ruin," Baraka replied coldly. The noble leaned closer. "What will you do?" Baraka's eyes gleamed. "Remind them that mercy has teeth." That night, as torches burned low, Baraka met with a merchant from a distant land, a man whose wares were not spices or silk, but powders that could kill without trace. From a small leather pouch, the merchant poured dust as fine as sand onto his palm. "The breath of the serpent," he said. "Invisible, slow, and silent. It kills kindness first, and then life." Baraka's eyes glittered. "Perfect. Who is your target?" asked the merchant. "The river maiden," Baraka said. "She who weeps gold." The merchant hesitated. "Killing a chosen of the gods, that path is dangerous." Baraka smiled grimly. "Then let the gods strike me, if they still dare." That same night, in a quieter wing of the palace, Alyamide found Amira by the window overlooking the moonlit river. She was humming softly, the melody like the one she had sung when she first freed him. He stopped beside her. "Every time you sing, I remember the river. The day you found me." Amira turned. "I remember too. You were in pain, but your eyes were gentle." He nodded. "I wanted to thank you. For everything. For seeing a man when everyone else saw a curse." She smiled sadly. "You forget, Alyamide, I didn't save you. Mercy did." He looked at her, his gaze deep and steady. "Then mercy has your face." For a moment, silence hung between them, warm, fragile. Outside, lightning flickered faintly in the far hills, like a heartbeat. "You should rest," Amira whispered. "Tomorrow the people will look to you, not me." "I can't rest," he said. "Every time I close my eyes, I see what pride destroyed. I need to rebuild it, with you." She froze. "With me? You gave this kingdom its soul again," he said. "Help me keep it alive." Her heart pounded. "I will always help Kimbula," she said carefully. "But some storms return if we call them too soon." Alyamide nodded slowly. "Then we'll wait for calm skies." The next evening, the palace hosted a smaller gathering, a private supper to end the festival. The king, the prince, and Amira dined together with a few nobles. Laughter filled the air, music drifted in from the courtyard, and servants poured palm wine into polished cups. Unseen by most, Chief Baraka signaled one of the servers. The men nodded nervously, then sprinkled a pinch of serpent dust into a single cup, the one placed before Amira. Baraka smiled. "For mercy," he whispered, raising his own cup. Amira reached for hers, but before she could drink, Kano rushed into the hall. His face was pale, his clothes soaked from rain. "My king," he cried. "The river. The river is turning black." The hall fell silent. Everyone turned toward the open balcony, and indeed, beyond the torches, the once golden river glowed dark and strange, as if poisoned by shadow. King Baji rose. "Send riders. Find the cause." Amira stood, her instincts burning. "It's not the river," she said. "It's the curse. It's returning." Al-Yamid reached for his sword. "Then I'll face it." Amira's hand shot out. "No. This time, it calls for me." As she turned, her sleeve brushed her cup. It tipped, spilling the poisoned wine across the table. The droplets hissed, and where they touched the wood, the surface turned black. Gasps filled the room. Baraka froze, the blood draining from his face. Al-Yamid's eyes narrowed. "Poison." The prince's voice was low, deadly calm. "Who brought that wine?" The servants fell to their knees, trembling. The noble Baraka gave the order. Baraka stepped back, hand reaching for his dagger. "You think you can save this kingdom with songs? Then sing your last." He lunged, but before his blade could strike, a wind burst through the hall, blowing out every torch. The room filled with golden light. When sight returned, Baraka lay sprawled on the ground, his hand blackened, his face twisted in terror. His dagger had melted into ash. Amira stood over him, untouched, her eyes glowing faintly gold. "The river protects its own," she said softly. The torches relit themselves, their flames bright and calm. A gentle wind swirled through the hall, carrying a whisper that made everyone tremble. "The serpent rises where mercy is tested. But fear shall not have the last word." The goddess Oya's voice faded into the distance, leaving behind a silence filled with awe. King Baji fell to his knees. "The gods still walk among us." Al-Yamid took Amira's hand. "They walk through us." Outside, the river shimmered again, no longer black, but clear as crystal. Later that night, as the palace slept, Amira returned to the riverbank. The moon shone softly across her face. She knelt, dipping her hand into the cool water. "You saved me again," she whispered. The river rippled in reply. Al-Yamid approached quietly. "You saved us all." Amira smiled faintly. "The gods test mercy, Al-Yamid. Every time it lives, something darker dies." He nodded. "Then we must keep it alive." They stood side by side in silence, watching the reflection of the stars tremble in the golden river. For the first time in generations, Kimbula knew peace, but in the far distance, lightning flashed once more. The goddess was not done. Her storms were never only for destruction, sometimes, they came to remind even the kindest hearts how easily love can be tested. The moon hung full above Kimbula, vast and silent as a watching eye. The river flowed quietly through the heart of the kingdom, its golden shimmer returned, but beneath its calm surface, something stirred. Even peace has a pulse, and sometimes that pulse beats with warning. That night, Amira could not sleep. She lay on her mat, eyes open, listening to the hum of crickets outside. The night air was heavy with mist, and the faint sound of the river's song called her name again and again. When she finally drifted into sleep, she found herself standing upon the river itself. The water was still, too still, and her reflection looked back at her, glowing faintly with gold light. Suddenly, the surface began to ripple, and from the depths rose the voice of the goddess Oya, soft but commanding. "Child of mercy. The river runs clear, but men's hearts do not. The serpent may be dead, but its shadow walks still." Amira bowed her head in the dream. "What must I do, O mother of storms. Listen to the wind, the voice replied. When mercy grows too bright, envy seeks to dim it. The crown trembles, and so does love. Guard both, or the river will mourn again. Amira's reflection changed, her own face turned into water, then into flame, then into nothing. She gasped and awoke, drenched in sweat. Outside, the wind had risen, whispering like 100 unseen mouths. Her father stirred from his sleep mat. Amira. What is it? She sat up slowly. The river spoke again. He frowned. The gods never rest, do they? No, she said softly. And neither can I. At sunrise, the palace came alive with movement. King Baji had called a council, not of priests, for there were none left, but of nobles and elders. They gathered in the great hall, uneasy under the prince's calm gaze. Al-Yamid stood tall at the king's side, the golden sun reflecting off his arm cuffs. We will rebuild Kimbula, he said. Not with fear, but with justice. The goddess has given us peace, now we must earn it. A murmur spread through the crowd. Chief Osei, one of the older nobles, raised his voice. And who decides justice, my prince? The crown, or the girl who sings by the river? Al-Yamid's jaw tightened. The gods decide. We only obey. Another noble scoffed. The gods. Or the river maiden who charms them. The king slammed his staff down. Enough. It was her mercy that saved my son, and this kingdom. Osei bowed, but his eyes gleamed with challenge. Even the purest river can flood, Majesty. When the meeting ended, Al-Yamid followed his father to the courtyard. They doubt you, the king said softly. But they fear her. They should fear themselves, said Al-Yamid. Their envy is louder than thunder. Later that day, Amira came to the palace gardens. The scent of hibiscus filled the air, and butterflies flitted lazily in the sun. She found Al-Yamid sitting beneath the tall Irako tree, reading from an old scroll. You look troubled, she said. He smiled faintly. Trouble sits on this throne even when no one is in it. Amira sat beside him. The goddess spoke last night. She said envy walks again. Al-Yamid looked up sharply. From whom? Amira shook her head. She didn't say. But I saw a shadow, long, cold, without form. It moved between crowns and hearts. Al-Yamid leaned forward. Then we must be ready. Amira nodded slowly. I fear this shadow won't come as a beast or a curse. It will come as trust turned bitter. He sighed. You sound like Oya herself. Amira smiled faintly. I only repeat what water teaches. Across the city, in dark corners of taverns and courtyards, whispers began to coil again. The tale of the river maiden grew into a song, and songs became stories, and stories became envy. Some said Amira was no maiden at all, but a spirit wearing human skin. Others claimed she had bewitched the prince to claim the throne herself. She sings to rivers, they said. What else can she command? The words reached the ears of Chief Osei. He sat in his hall surrounded by loyal men, feeding on their rumors. If the people worship her more than the crown, he said, then soon the crown will bow to her. And that, we cannot allow. What will you do? Asked one of his men. Osei smiled darkly. Let the people see what they worship. The next evening, as the moon climbed high, a cry echoed through the streets of Kimbula. Villagers gathered near the temple ruins, torches blazing, faces fearful. At the center of the square lay a young herdsman, trembling and pale, his body marked with strange golden lines. The river cursed him, someone shouted. He bathed in it at night, now look. Elders crossed themselves and whispered prayers. The air grew thick with fear. By morning, the rumor had spread to the palace. The river is turning men to gold, said a servant breathlessly. The maiden's tears are poison. When Al-Yamid heard, he rode straight to the river. Amira was already there, kneeling at the water's edge. She looked up, her face pale. I heard the screams. Al-Yamid dismounted. They say your blessing has turned into a curse. She shook her head firmly. No. This river heals, it doesn't harm. Someone twisted it. As they spoke, a group of villagers approached, angry, fearful, led by Chief Osei. You've brought this upon us, he shouted. First a storm, now this. I would never hurt anyone, said Amira. Osei pointed at her pendant. You wear the mark of a god, no mortal should wield such power. Confess your sin. Al-Yamid stepped forward. Enough. You speak to the woman who saved your children's lives. But Osei's voice rose. Then let her prove it. If her heart is pure, let her step into the river again, and live. The crowd murmured. Even Amira's father, trembling beside her, whispered, Child, don't. Amira took a deep breath. If truth must walk through water, then I will. The crowd gathered as Amira stepped barefoot into the glowing current. The water lapped gently at her ankles, then her knees. The surface rippled with gold light. Osei shouted, If she is mortal, let the river leave her untouched. If she is spirit, let it claim her. The air grew still. Even the wind paused. Amira closed her eyes. Oya, she whispered, if I am your child, let them see what mercy truly is. The river shimmered, then rose, swirling around her like a golden veil. The people gasped as the water lifted her feet off the ground, yet she did not sink. Her hair floated like threads of sunlight, her skin glowing faintly. A soft voice filled the air. The heart that shows mercy cannot drown. The one that sows fear shall drink its own poison. The river lowered her gently back to the shore. The crowd fell to their knees, crying out in awe. But Osei stumbled back, face pale, eyes wide. His hands, the ones that had pointed in accusation, began to turn to stone. He screamed, falling to his knees. No, mercy. Mercy. Amira turned to him, sorrow in her eyes. Mercy is not given to mockery, Osei. Only to repentance. The goddess's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Let him live, as a warning. The stone spread no further. Osei collapsed, sobbing, his arms half turned to rock. The people wept and bowed. Forgive us, River Maiden. Amira said softly, do not kneel to me. Kneel to the mercy that still forgives you. That night, as the stars burned quietly above Kimbula, Amira walked alone along the riverbank. The wind carried the scent of rain. You are learning, came the goddess's voice, gentle and proud. You held mercy and judgment in the same hand, and did not lose your heart. Amira smiled faintly. But they still fear me. Let them, said Oya. Fear makes way for reverence. And reverence teaches wisdom. Amira knelt, touching the water once more. Then what comes next? A test not of power, said the goddess, but of love. For love is the storm that even gods cannot tame. The wind died, and silence fell, the kind that hides promise and peril alike. The kingdom of Kimbula glowed with the peace that follows rain. But peace, like love, is fragile, and both can shatter under the smallest whisper. The people sang Amira's name as though it were a prayer. The prince's gaze followed her like sunlight following dawn. And somewhere beyond them, the goddess Oya watched, silent, waiting. Amira had become both legend and lesson. Mothers taught their children her songs. Farmers carved her symbol, a tear-shaped droplet, onto their calabashes for good harvest. But for Amira, fame was a cloak too heavy to wear. Each morning, she returned to the river, kneeling by the reeds to wash her hands and whisper, O river, carry their praise away. Leave only peace behind. The water shimmered as if nodding in understanding. But the peace she asked for was not shared by everyone. In the palace, King Baji sat alone beneath the carved rafters, turning his crown slowly in his hands. He had regained his son, yet the prophecy still whispered in his mind, your pride will destroy your line. Now, that pride wore a new mask, fear for his son's heart. When Al-Yamid entered the chamber, the king studied him quietly. My son, he said, you look at the river more than the throne. Al-Yamid smiled faintly. The river listens better. The king frowned. A ruler listens to men, not water. Be careful. Affection is not always wisdom. Olymide's eyes softened. You speak of Amira. I speak of storms, said the king. The goddess tests through love. If your heart turns, the sky may turn with it. The prince bowed slightly. Then let the sky do as it must. My heart has already chosen. The king's hand tightened on the armrest, but he said nothing. He had fought the gods before. He knew how that ended. That night, the wind carried the scent of rain again. Amira walked along the riverbank, the moonlight turning her skin silver. She heard a faint rustle, not of reeds or fish, but of voices. The river murmured in words she could not fully understand. When she knelt and touched the water, her reflection wavered, replaced by a face she had come to know well, the goddess Oya. Child of mercy, said the goddess, her tone both tender and stern. You have healed fear, silenced envy, and restored faith. But love is the final storm. The heart of a prince cannot belong to the river. Amira bowed her head. He is kind. His love is true. Even truth can drown when two worlds meet, Oya said. You are bound to water, he to earth. If you join, one must forsake their nature. Amira's eyes filled with tears. Then let me be the one to forsake. The goddess's face dimmed, the current rising around it. Be careful what you offer. Even love has a price. And with that, the water fell silent again, leaving Amira trembling on the shore. A confession beneath the Irako tree. The next evening, Olyimide sought her out beneath the great Irako tree by the river. The sun had just begun to set, painting the sky in streaks of gold and red. You haven't been to the palace, he said softly. I needed quiet, she replied. Too many eyes. Too many prayers. He nodded. Sometimes I think peace is just noise that hasn't found a drum yet. Amira smiled faintly. You speak like a poet. Maybe, he said, stepping closer. But tonight, I want to speak like a man. She turned, meeting his gaze, warm, uncertain, searching. I have loved you since the moment I saw you by the river, he said. When I was cursed, your voice reached me where no god could. You saw a man in a monster. You gave me my name back. Amira's breath caught. You speak of things the gods have already warned me of. I don't care for warnings, he said. I care for truth. She stepped back, her eyes glistening. The truth is that the goddess forbids it. Olyimide's jaw clenched. Then the gods fear love. No, she whispered. They fear what love can break. That night, unable to rest, Amira walked again to the river. She looked into its calm surface, but instead of her reflection, she saw flashes of her past. Her freeing of the goat, her tears turning to gold. Olyimide rising from light. And then, a future she did not understand, her standing beside a throne, the sky torn by storm. Her reflection spoke with her voice but another tone. Mercy and love cannot share the same heart forever. Amira closed her eyes. Then let mercy make room. The wind rose. The surface shattered. Meanwhile, in the palace, Olyimide sat by the window, his hands clasped. Kano entered quietly, bowing. Your Highness, you called. Yes, said the prince. I need you to deliver a message to Amira. Tell her. He hesitated, then smiled faintly. Tell her that when the sky turns gray, she is my only sunrise. Kano frowned. The king will not like that. I know, said Olyimide. But the king no longer commands my heart. That night, the king met with his council. The people whisper of their love, said one elder. If the prince weds her, the nobles will revolt. They still see her as a spirit, not a woman. The king's face was grave. I cannot fight the gods again. If she is chosen by them, she must remain their servant. Chief Osei, still marked with stone on his hands, bowed slowly. Then send her away, Majesty. Before her love brings thunder once more. King Baji's eyes closed. Perhaps that is mercy. At dawn, soldiers came to the river. Amira stood calmly as they approached, the wind curling through her hair. By order of the king, the captain said gently, "You are to leave Kimbula by nightfall. You are to dwell near the eastern mountains, where the temple of Oya once stood. There, you may continue your service, away from the crown." Kano arrived breathless. Amira, no. She raised a hand to silence him. The king does what he believes right. When Alyamide heard, he ran from the palace, his voice echoing down the river path. Amira. She turned as he reached her, his face filled with anger and sorrow. "I won't let them take you. You can't stop them," she said softly. "This is not punishment. It's a choice." He shook his head. "Whose choice?" "Mine," she whispered. Lightning cracked far off over the horizon. "I cannot stay where love must hide in shadows. The goddess warned me, and I must listen." He took her hands. "And what of me?" "You must rule," she said. "With mercy. That's what I gave you, not my presence, but my heart." Tears streamed down her cheeks. They fell into the river, turning gold as they touched the water. Alyamide cupped her face gently. "Then promise me this, when I call your name, the wind will carry it to you." Amira smiled through her tears. "It already does." The wind rose, carrying their words across the glowing water. By sunset, she was gone, leaving behind only the faint shimmer of light where her tears had fallen. That night, rain came again, not a storm, but a soft, endless drizzle that washed the streets of Kimbula clean. The people said the river was mourning. But the goddess, watching from her realm, whispered to the wind. The heart must break to become divine. The morning sun rose dull and pale over Kimbula, as if the sky itself mourned. The river that once danced with golden light now flowed with a gentler shimmer, soft and subdued, like a lullaby after tears. And from the far end of the riverbank, a small crowd watched as Amira prepared to leave the only home she had ever known. Departure. The air smelled of earth and farewell. Her father held her hand tightly, though he said little. His eyes had aged years in a single night. Beside him stood Kano, his loyal friend, his face a mask of grief barely contained. Amira wore a plain linen wrap and carried only a small woven satchel filled with herbs, river stones, and a gourd of water. The bronze pendant of Oya hung at her neck, catching faint light from the river. Kano broke the silence. "You shouldn't go alone," he said. "The eastern mountains are far, and the forest between is full of strange spirits." Amira smiled faintly. "The spirits do not harm those who listen." He clenched his fists. "But men do." Her hand brushed his arm gently. "Then I will listen for you too." The royal escort, 3 horsemen bearing the crest of Kimbula, waited near the road. Their faces were solemn, respectful. None dared meet her eyes for long. From the distance, a horn sounded from the palace. It was not a royal command, just a farewell. Amira turned once more toward the river. The water rippled softly, forming words only she could hear. "Go where the wind calls, child of mercy. The storm is not over, only resting." She nodded silently, then began to walk. The journey east. The land changed as she traveled. The fertile plains of Kimbula gave way to dry savanna, and then to thick forests that breathed with whispers of the unseen. At night, she rested beneath trees older than the kingdom itself, their roots curled like sleeping serpents. The escorts kept their distance. They called her the River Woman, not unkindly, but with awe that bordered on fear. One evening, as they made camp by a shallow stream, one of them, young, barely older than a boy, gathered the courage to speak. "Lady Amira," he said, "is it true that your tears turned a goat into a man?" She looked up from the small fire, smiling gently. "It wasn't my tears that did it. It was love." The others exchanged uneasy glances. "Love?" the boy asked. "Of a beast." "Love of mercy," she said. "It sees no beast, only what might be healed." That night, when she sang softly to the fire, even the crickets fell silent to listen. 3 days into the journey, the road vanished into a dense forest. Mist hung low between the trees, and strange blue fireflies hovered in the air like wandering stars. The horses snorted nervously. "This is the Whispering Forest," one guard said. The old priest said spirits guard it. Amira stepped ahead of them. "Then we walk as guests." The moment she crossed into the forest, the air changed. Leaves rustled, though no wind blew. A voice, soft, distant, neither male nor female, spoke from the shadows. "Why does the river walk on feet of clay?" Amira stopped, bowing her head. "Because mercy still has work to do." The mist shifted. From between the trees emerged faint, glowing shapes, spirits of the old river priests. Their faces were kind but solemn, their bodies translucent as smoke. "You carry Oya's light," one said. "But the world still carries her wound." Amira looked up. "Show me the wound." They pointed east, where the mountains rose like sleeping beasts. The tallest peak shimmered faintly with golden clouds. "Atop that mountain lies the old temple," said another spirit. "It sleeps beneath the dust of forgotten prayers. You must wake it, before the darkness does." "What darkness?" she asked. The spirits looked at one another. Then, in one voice, they answered. "The curse that began with a prince does not end with a maiden." That night, as they camped near the forest's edge, Amira dreamed again. She stood within the ruined temple, its pillars cracked, its statues broken. At the center burned a faint golden flame, struggling to stay alive. From the shadows came two figures. One was Prince Alyamide, his face calm but sad. The other was Ebo, the fallen priest, his body cloaked in shadow. "Why do you haunt me?" Amira asked. Ebo's voice was hollow. "Because mercy forgave me, but I did not forgive myself." The prince turned to her. "And because curses cling to what mercy cannot reach." The golden flame flickered, almost dying. Then she heard Oya's voice, faint but urgent. "Wake the temple, Amira. The gods are fading, and the hearts of men grow loud again." She reached for the flame, but when her fingers touched it, it turned cold. She awoke with a cry. By the seventh day, the mountains loomed before them, steep, jagged, veiled in mist. The path wound upward through rocks and vines until they reached a plateau where the ruins of the old temple stood. The pillars were cracked and overgrown with moss. The altar stone was half buried, carved with Oya's sigil, a spiral surrounded by waves. The guards bowed and stepped back. "Our duty ends here," said their leader. "The rest belongs to you." Amira nodded in gratitude. "Travel safely. Tell the king the river flows still." When they left, she stood alone before the altar. The air here was different, older, heavier. She could feel centuries of forgotten worship pressing against her skin. She knelt and placed her palm on the cold stone. "Mother of winds," she whispered, "your house sleeps. Shall I wake it?" The wind rose, slow at first, then fierce. The trees bent low, and lightning flashed across a cloudless sky. The temple answered. Dust lifted from the altar. Old carvings began to glow faintly gold. A sound like distant drums filled the air, echoing from the mountains. Amira's pendant pulsed against her chest. The voice of Oya returned, soft, reverent, yet full of warning. "You have come far, child of mercy. But what you wake will wake the world. A storm does not know whom it will spare." Amira bowed her head. "Then let it test me." Far away, in Kimbula, the skies darkened without rain. Alyamide, standing on the palace balcony, felt the air shift, warm, thick, electric. Kano ran to him. "The winds have changed," he said. "The trees bend eastward. It's as if the storm has gone after her." Alyamide's eyes hardened. "Then so will I." He looked once toward his father's throne room, where the king prayed before the shrine of Oya. "She walks into the mountain to save us again," he whispered. "And I will not let her face it alone." The temple stirs. Atop the mountain, the air grew colder. The golden carvings on the altar flared with sudden light. The earth trembled beneath Amira's feet, and from within the stone came a deep, shuddering sound, like something vast and ancient waking from sleep. The goddess's voice spoke again, distant but filled with both pride and sorrow. The temple lives once more. And so does what it held. Amira stepped back as cracks formed across the floor. A burst of wind knocked her to her knees. From the heart of the altar rose a column of dark mist, twisting like smoke. The darkness spoke in a voice like 1,000 whispers. So, the river's child has come. But mercy cannot banish what it does not understand. The wind howled. The mountain shook. Amira steadied herself, gripping her pendant. Then teach me, shadow. The voice laughed, deep, ancient, cruel. I am what the gods left behind. And now, I will remind the world why they were feared. Lightning split the sky. And the mountain, for the first time in centuries, began to thunder. The mountain roared as if the world itself were groaning awake. The wind spiraled through the ruins, tossing Amira's hair into a wild halo. She clutched the glowing pendant of Oya close to her chest, its warmth the only thing keeping her grounded as the darkness took form before her eyes. From the altar's crack rose a cloud of black mist, thick as storm smoke. Within it shimmered countless faces, screaming, laughing, weeping, all woven into one monstrous shape. The spirit's voice was a chorus, male and female, young and old, the echo of all who had ever feared the gods. I am the wrath that was cast away, it thundered. The shadow that even Oya refused to keep. When men stopped fearing storms, I remained, the hunger for fear itself. Amira staggered back. You are not of mercy, she said. You are what mercy tamed. The spirit laughed, a sound that made the air shiver. Mercy. The goddess buried me beneath her temple, but you have freed me, little mortal. You brought light to the stone, and light always awakens the shadow behind it. The ground shook violently. Statues cracked and fell, their heads rolling like dice across the floor. The spirit's mist spread wider, forming dark tendrils that crawled up the walls. Amira's pendant burned hot against her skin. If you are Oya's wrath, then you know her voice. Hear it through me, return to the river and rest. The spirit hissed. Her voice no longer rules me. I am the storm unchained. And I will remind men what happens when the gods are forgotten. It lashed out, a tendril of darkness striking the altar. The blast sent Amira flying backward, her back slamming into the stone wall. Pain rippled through her body, but her spirit held. She rose slowly, her eyes blazing gold. Then I will remind you what happens when mercy stands its ground. The wind's daughter. The mountain's peak erupted with wind and fire. The 3 horsemen who had escorted Amira fled down the path, terrified. From miles away, villagers in the eastern plains saw lightning dance around the summit and believed the goddess had descended in fury. But in truth, Amira was alone within the ruins, except for the storm itself. She spread her hands wide. Oya, if this is your castaway, then lend me your breath. The pendant pulsed, and the voice of the goddess whispered faintly within her mind. You are my wind now, Amira. But remember, even wind must bow before the storm. Amira's feet lifted slightly from the ground. Her hair rose like threads of light, her eyes glowing brighter. The spirit hesitated, as if sensing Oya's essence within her. Leave this world, she commanded. Your time is done. The spirit's laughter returned, softer this time, but colder. You speak like a goddess, but bleed like a mortal. I will take your voice, and through it, the world will remember fear. Dark mist lunged toward her. She crossed her arms before her face, whispering a chant she didn't know she knew. The pendant blazed, and from it burst a wall of golden wind. The impact rippled outward, tearing through the black mist like sunlight through fog. The spirit screamed, its shape unraveling, but only for a moment. It reformed, darker, angrier. You cannot destroy me, river child. You freed me, and now I am bound to you. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you love, I will devour. Amira's breath trembled. Then you are bound to mercy itself. She slammed her palm against the altar. The ground erupted in light. Far below, Prince Alyamide was climbing the mountain. The path was steep, the air thin, and lightning cracked across the sky like the beating of war drums. His clothes were torn, his sword sheathed. He climbed not as a prince, but as a man desperate to reach the one who gave him life again. "Kano," he shouted over the wind. "Faster!" Kano, panting behind him, stumbled on the rocky slope. "Your Highness, the mountain burns. The spirits. I will not leave her again." Alyamide roared, and his voice carried upward like a promise. From above came a sudden cry, Amira's cry, echoing down through the thunder. He froze, his heart pounding. "She's there." Lightning struck the path beside them, scattering stones. When the dust cleared, Kano pointed with trembling hands. "Look." At the summit, framed against a whirl of golden light and shadow, they saw her, Amira, standing within a ring of fire, her hands raised as the mountain spirit coiled around her like smoke. Alyamide's eyes blazed. "Hold on," he whispered. "I'm coming." The wrath unleashed. Inside the temple, the battle reached its peak. The spirit had grown vast, its body a storm of faces and wind. Every voice it carried spoke of anger, men betrayed, lovers lost, kingdoms fallen. It was not evil by nature, only ancient grief twisted into rage. "You feed on fear," Amira said, circling it slowly, "because fear makes you feel alive." "Fear is life," the spirit hissed. "Without it, gods fade, and mortals grow arrogant. They must remember who commands the sky." "They already remember," she said softly. "They just call it by a new name, hope." The spirit screamed, recoiling as though the word itself burned it. "Hope is the lie mercy tells. Then I will live that lie until it becomes truth." The goddess's voice whispered again in her ear. "Now, Amira, bind it." Amira knelt and pressed both hands to the cracked stone floor. Her tears fell, golden once more, into the fissures. Light shot outward, weaving a spiral that encircled the spirit. The darkness thrashed, roaring, but the light held fast, winding tighter until it could no longer move. The mountain trembled violently. From below, Alyamide reached the final ridge just in time to see the golden spiral ignite. "Amira," he shouted. "Stop, you'll be trapped too." But she smiled, faintly, her lips moving in words carried by the wind. "Mercy saves all, even wrath." The light consumed the temple, a brilliant flash that blinded the sky. The silence after. When the light faded, the mountain was still. The temple stood half-ruined, its carvings scorched but alive with faint gold. At the center, where Amira had stood, there was now only her pendant, resting gently on the altar, glowing softly. Alyamide ran forward, falling to his knees. "Amira." He searched frantically, his hands shaking. The pendant pulsed once in his palm, warm, alive, then dimmed. Kano caught up, gasping. "Is she?" Alyamide closed his eyes. "No. She's not gone. She's part of it now." He turned his face upward, to the swirling clouds that began to clear. The wind brushed his cheek, soft, like a caress. And faintly, through the whispering air, he heard her voice. "Where mercy walks, love never dies." The return of calm. Days later, the skies cleared. The mountain no longer burned. The river in Kimbula flowed brighter than ever, its waters warm to the touch. Fishermen said they could hear singing beneath the current, a woman's voice, gentle and endless. King Baji, looking from the palace balcony, wept openly. "She is gone," he murmured. Alyamide shook his head. "No. She became what she always was, the river's heart." The goddess speaks one last time. In the quiet of her temple reborn, Oya's voice filled the air once more. "The river maiden has done what even gods could not. She turned wrath into wind, and wind into peace. Let her name be sung as long as rain falls upon the earth." And so, in the centuries that followed, every time the wind swept gently through the valleys of Kimbula, the people said, "Amira walks again." The sun rose gently over Kimbula, its light falling on a kingdom reborn yet quiet with grief. It had been 7 days since the mountain blazed with gold, 7 days since Amira vanished into wind and song. Every dawn, mist rolled down from the eastern mountains to the river, soft, silvery, alive. And every dawn, Prince Alyamide came to that river, as if waiting for something only the water could return. He knelt by the same reeds where Amira once sang. The air was cool, the morning light pale and forgiving. The pendant she left, the pendant of Oya, hung around his neck, glowing faintly like captured sunlight. Alyamide touched it gently. "You said mercy never dies," he whispered. "Then show me how to live without you." The river rippled, just once, like a breath taken between heartbeats. And from its surface, faint golden words formed and vanished again. "I am the wind, not gone, just unseen." He closed his eyes, smiling through his tears. "Then let the unseen guide me." Behind him, Kano approached quietly. "You come here every day, my prince." The court grows restless. Alyamide stood, brushing sand from his palms. "Let them rest, then. The kingdom has chased power long enough. It's time we chased peace." Kano nodded, though worry shadowed his face. The nobles whisper again. "Some say the river listens too closely to your heart." Alyamide's smile faded. "Let them whisper. The gods already know the truth." Weeks passed, and Kimbula began to change. Under Alyamide's rule, fear no longer ruled the throne. The temples reopened, not to demand sacrifices, but to teach songs of peace. Farmers were given back their lands. Traders no longer had to pay tribute for crossing the king's roads. Even the old priest Osei, whose hands were still part stone, was given mercy. He was made caretaker of the temple gardens, where his task was to tend the sacred flowers that grew by the river. "Let mercy cure pride," Alyamide told him. "For you and for all of us." The people rejoiced, but beyond their joy, a quiet mystery began to stir. Each evening, children who played by the river came home with strange stories. They spoke of a woman made of wind, who brushed their cheeks and laughed softly. Of petals that glowed gold and drifted across the surface of the water. Of songs that sounded like Amira's voice. The elders crossed themselves, whispering prayers. "The goddess walks again," they said. But Alyamide knew, this was not the goddess. This was her. The messenger by the water. One morning, as Alyamide stood alone by the river, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, expecting Kano, but saw a young woman instead. She was dressed in a simple blue wrap, her hair plaited with cowrie shells that clicked softly in the breeze. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with magic, but with the calm of one who had seen beyond life and returned. She bowed. "You are the one she loved." Alyamide's heart raced. "Who are you?" "I am Nia," she said. "A servant of the river. The goddess sent me from the mountain." "The mountain?" he asked. "Then you know what happened there?" She nodded. "I saw the light that bound the storm. I saw her merge with it. The goddess's wrath sleeps again, but it will not sleep forever." Alyamide frowned. "Why have you come?" Nia's gaze softened. "Because she asked me to." She reached into her satchel and brought out a small object, a silver shell, shaped like a spiral, its surface pulsing faintly with golden veins. She placed it in his hand. She said, "Give him this. When the river sings and the wind is restless, he will know what to do." Alyamide stared at the shell, his throat tightening. "She left a message." Nia nodded. "More than that. She left her power. This shell carries her song, the voice that can calm or call the river itself." He clenched it gently in his palm. "Then she's still with me." "She always was," Nia said. "But her voice now belongs to the wind, and to you." That night, Alyamide couldn't sleep. He sat on the palace balcony, watching the silver moon drift over the quiet city. The shell lay beside him, glowing faintly. He thought of her, Amira kneeling by the river, her eyes full of faith, her hands freeing the goat that had once been him. He thought of the way she smiled before walking into exile. Of how she had turned wrath into peace. Where mercy walks, love never dies, he whispered. You were right. He lifted the shell to his lips, uncertain why. When he breathed into it, a soft hum filled the air, low at first, then rising into a melody so familiar it made his chest ache. It was her song. The sound carried over the river, over the trees, over the sleeping kingdom. People stirred in their homes, weeping without knowing why. The water shimmered faintly, golden ripples spreading across its surface. And from the far distance, deep in the mountains, a faint wind answered, a voice echoing back. My love, keep the river kind. The next morning, the court awoke to strange news. Fishermen spoke of black waves far to the east, water that moved against the current. The wind had changed, blowing from mountain to sea instead of sea to land. The mountain breathes again, Osei warned, his stone hand gripping his staff. Something wakes beneath it. Al-Yamid turned pale. The spirit. Not the same, Osei said. But born from the same breath. Before the prince could reply, the wind outside shifted sharply, slamming the palace doors open. A gust swirled through the hall, scattering scrolls and torches. The pendant at his chest glowed gold. From the chaos, Nia appeared, her eyes wide. The river has turned against itself. The goddess's balance is breaking. Al-Yamid's voice hardened. Then we go to her, to the mountain. By dawn, 3 figures rode east, Al-Yamid, Nia, and Kano. The road shimmered under the heat, dust rising in clouds. Every stream they passed flowed strangely backward, as if retreating from something unseen. Villagers they met bowed and prayed, saying, the wind screams her name again. As they climbed higher, the air grew cold and electric. Nia pointed toward the mountain's peak. It's not the goddess this time. It's what she left unguarded. The wrath? Al-Yamid asked. No, she said softly. The sorrow. They pressed on, unaware that deep within the temple ruins, a faint, broken whisper had begun to echo again, a familiar voice caught between mercy and memory. If love defies the gods, then mercy must choose. The wind grew sharper as they climbed, howling through the mountain passes like a morning cry. The sky hung heavy with gray clouds that swirled without rain. It was neither storm nor calm, it was waiting. Prince Al-Yamid, Nia, and Kano pressed forward on foot now. The horses refused to go higher, the air smelled too much of lightning and memory. The trail wound upward, narrow and broken. Below them, rivers glistened like silver threads running toward Kimbula, but something strange caught Al-Yamid's eye. The water flowed uphill, drawn toward the summit. The mountain drinks the river, Nia murmured. Kano crossed himself. Then the gods are thirsty again. They reached the plateau by sunset. The ruins of Oya's temple stood ahead, cracked stone, glowing faintly with gold lines that pulsed like veins. But this time, the glow was dim and trembling, as if something inside the mountain was crying. Al-Yamid stepped forward slowly. Amira, he whispered. If you are here, show me. The wind stirred gently, carrying the scent of rain, familiar, tender. Then, from the altar, came a low hum, soft as a heartbeat. A voice, faint, aching, rose from the earth itself. You should not have come, my love. Al-Yamid froze. The sound was Amira's, but broken, like an echo torn by distance. He knelt, his hand trembling as he touched the cracked stone. Then it's true. You're here. Part of me, the voice said. But not all. The temple shuddered. Golden light spilled from the cracks again, but this time it was mixed with gray mist that curled upward like smoke. Nia's eyes widened. It's not the wrath, she said. It's sorrow. The mist took form slowly, not monstrous like before, but gentle, fragile, trembling. It was a woman's silhouette, her features blurred by tears that never stopped falling. When she spoke, her words carried warmth and pain in equal measure. Do you know what becomes of mercy when it loses hope? It becomes grief. Al-Yamid's heart ached. Who are you? I am the part of Oya that mourns what love cannot save. When Amira merged with the storm, she touched that sorrow, and awakened me. The spirit lifted its face, and for a fleeting moment, Al-Umayyad saw Amira's eyes within it, full of compassion and unbearable longing. He took a step forward. "Then let me bring you peace." Peace. The spirit's tears turned to silver rain, splashing across the floor. "Peace is what the gods denied me when they made me love the world. You mortals forget, gods grieve too." As the spirit wept, the walls of the mountain shook. Streams burst from cracks in the ground, flowing upward into the air before turning to mist. The whole mountain seemed to breathe with pain. Nia raised her staff, light flickering at its tip. "She's drawing the river's soul. If she takes too much, Kimbula will dry to dust." Kano shouted over the rising wind. "We have to stop her." Al-Umayyad looked at the spirit, at Amira's eyes hidden within grief, and shook his head. "No. Not stop her. Heal her." He stepped closer, ignoring the rushing water swirling around his legs. "Amira, if you can hear me, you taught me mercy. You turned my curse into life. Now let me return it to you." For a moment, the spirit hesitated, the mist flickering, its form trembling. "You don't understand," it whispered. "To heal me is to remember everything that was lost." "Then remember," Al-Umayyad said. "We will remember together." He took the silver shell from his pouch, the one Nia had given him, the one that carried Amira's song. He lifted it to his lips and blew softly. At first, there was no sound. Then a low hum rose, the same melody Amira once sang by the river. The air shimmered. The temple's light grew steadier. The spirit froze, listening. Its mist thinned, and faint shapes formed within it, faces of villagers, soldiers, and lost souls who had once prayed to Oya. Their voices joined the song, layer upon layer, until it filled the mountain like the sound of the sea. Al-Umayyad's eyes filled with tears. "You are not grief," he whispered. "You are memory." The spirit trembled again, this time, not in pain but in release. "Memory," it murmured. "Yes, mercy remembers." Light burst from the cracks in the stone, bright as dawn. The rushing water slowed, then stilled. The mountain exhaled. When the light faded, the temple stood whole again, the carvings restored, the altar clean and glowing with steady gold. The mist had vanished, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air like sunlight on dew. And in the center of the floor lay the silver shell, now cracked open, revealing a single golden tear inside. Al-Umayyad picked it up gently. "Amira," he said softly, "you wept one last time, and the world was healed." Nia stepped beside him. "She has given you her final gift, not her sorrow, but her strength. Wherever the river flows, her mercy lives." Kano looked toward the horizon. The clouds had parted, and from the mountain's peak flowed a new stream, golden at first, then clear as crystal. It wound down through the valleys, rejoining the great river below. "The river of Amira," Nia said. "It will never run dry." As they descended the mountain, a warm wind brushed past them. And within it came a voice, strong now, not sorrowful, not wrathful, but whole. "Well done, my children. You have healed the wound of gods and men alike. From grief, you forged grace. From loss, love eternal." Al-Umayyad closed his eyes. "Oya," he whispered. "Where is she now?" "Everywhere you show mercy," said the voice. "Every time love chooses kindness over pride, she breathes again." By the time they returned to Kimbula, word had already spread. Farmers spoke of new springs bubbling in dry lands. The fish returned to the river. The fields shimmered under rain that fell without thunder. The people called it the blessing of Amira's tear. In the palace courtyard, Al-Umayyad built a fountain at the river's edge, carved with the shape of a woman holding a goat and a rose. At its base, he inscribed words that would outlive kingdoms. "Mercy is the strongest storm." That night, the prince stood once more by the river. The moon reflected in the calm water, and for a moment, he thought he saw her, Amira, standing across the current, smiling. Her image flickered like light on waves, then faded. He closed his eyes, and the wind brushed his face, carrying her voice one last time. "The river remembers, my love. And so must you." He smiled, touching the pendant at his chest. Always. The wind carried his answer downstream, toward the sea, toward eternity. Seasons passed like whispered prayers over the land of Kimbula. The rains came when they should. The harvests overflowed. The river, once cursed and feared, now flowed clear and strong, the lifeblood of a kingdom reborn. But peace, as every storyteller knows, is never the end of a tale. It is only the pause before the next storm. King Alumaid of the River Throne stood before his people one golden morning. The city had gathered along the banks of the newly sanctified river, their clothes bright with festival colors, indigo, crimson, and white. The sound of drums rolled through the air, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of Kimbula itself. Alumaid lifted his hand, and the crowd fell silent. "The river has spoken," he said, his voice carrying like thunder softened by grace. "It flows not only for Kimbula, but for every heart that dares to show mercy." The people cheered. Women threw petals into the river, men bowed their heads, children sang songs of Amira the river spirit. The goddess Oya's temple bells rang in rhythm, echoing across the valley. Yet in the midst of the joy, Nia, standing by the king's side, felt the wind change. It was subtle, a chill beneath the warmth, like a shadow behind sunlight. That same week, word reached the palace of a stranger who had come from the southern delta. He wore robes of deep green and carried a carved staff topped with a conch shell. His name was Tari, and he called himself the voice of the deep. He came not as a beggar or pilgrim but as one who expected to be heard. When Alumaid received him in the Hall of Winds, Tari bowed low but spoke boldly. "Great king of the river," he said, "your peace has reached our shores. But the sea grows restless. The tides no longer obey the moon. The gods of the deep demand tribute." "Tribute?" Alumaid asked, brow furrowing. "From whom?" "From the river itself," said Tari. "The waters must be joined, river to sea, mercy to might. Only then will the world remain in balance." Nia's eyes narrowed. "And what god demands such a price?" Tari smiled faintly. "The god you left behind, the one who rules what lies beneath mercy." That night, Alumaid walked with Nia by the riverbank. The air was calm, but the waters rippled strangely, as if stirred from below. "What do you make of his warning?" Alumaid asked. Nia shook her head. "There are spirits of the deep who do not bow to Oya. Old ones. Forgotten ones. They ruled before the rivers learned to flow. And you think they still hunger?" She met his gaze. "All gods hunger, my king. Even love must eat, and the sea has been starving for years." The king looked down at the water. For the first time in many moons, its reflection did not show his face, only endless darkness. "I feel it too," he said quietly. "The calm is too perfect. The river has been silent." The next morning, fishermen from the delta arrived in panic. "The sea eats our boats," they cried. "The waves rise without wind. Fish die with golden eyes, as if cursed." In the market square, women drew water from the wells and screamed, for the water shimmered faintly gold, then turned black in their pots. At the temple, Osei the old priest knelt in prayer before the altar. The candles went out one by one, snuffed by invisible breath. He lifted his stone-marked hands and whispered, "Oya's sorrow stirs again, but this time, it has learned the sea's name." That night, Alumaid dreamt of Amira again. She stood by the river, her dress of light rippling with the current, her eyes calm yet sad. "You built a kingdom of mercy," she said. "But mercy that does not defend becomes prey." He reached for her hand. "Tell me how to protect it." "You cannot fight the sea with a sword," she said softly. "Only with a mirror. The ocean must see itself." "I don't understand." "You will," she said. "When the water calls your name." He woke in the dark, his heart racing. On the table beside him, the silver shell, Amira's final gift, began to hum. It vibrated faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. He lifted it to his ear and heard not her song this time, but a low, distant roar, the sound of waves crashing endlessly in rage. At dawn, Alumaid called a council of elders, priests, and warriors. The sea god seeks tribute, he told them. But Kimbula bows to no darkness. Osei's voice was thin but steady. Then we must remind the waters who they serve. The river was born of Oya's breath, not the sea's hunger. Tari, the prophet, stood from his seat. Pride blinds you, old man. Rivers forget their source, but the sea never forgets its debt. The goddess of storms was born of the ocean's womb. The court murmured uneasily. The air grew heavy. Nia stepped forward. Enough. This is not a debate of gods, it is a warning. If the sea rises, mercy will drown. Tari turned to her, eyes glowing faintly blue. Then you should kneel, messenger. For the tide rises even now. That evening, dark clouds gathered over the western horizon. The wind carried a new scent, not of rain, but of salt. The people of Kimbula stood on their rooftops watching as the river began to swell, its current reversing once again. Lightning danced far in the distance, yet the thunder came not from the sky but from beneath the earth. Kano ran into the throne room, drenched in sweat. My king. The water climbs the hills, against the slope. It's as if the river remembers the sea. Al-Yamid rose to his feet. Sound the horns. Evacuate the lower villages. Tari appeared in the doorway, calm and smiling. You cannot stop the sea. You can only join it. Then we'll teach it mercy, Al-Yamid said, gripping the pendant at his chest. The wind howled through the palace. The candles blew out. And from the river outside, a deep voice rolled through the valley, not human, not divine, but something ancient. The river stole what was mine. Now I come to take it back. By nightfall, the water reached the city gates. It glowed faintly blue under the lightning, carrying strange lights within it, ghostly fish, shells that whispered, faces that formed and vanished. And at the river's heart, something vast moved, unseen but undeniable. Al-Yamid stepped onto the balcony, his robe whipping in the wind. Show yourself, he shouted. The water rose in a great column, forming a face of shifting currents, eyes dark as the abyss. You freed wrath. You healed sorrow. But you forgot hunger, it said. I am Oken, Lord of the Deep. And the river's mercy has made the world weak. Al-Yamid's heart pounded, but his voice was steady. Then you will learn what mercy truly is. The sea god's laughter echoed across the land. We shall see, River King. We shall see. The waters surged higher, swallowing the lower city in a single wave. The night split open with thunder. From the mountains to the delta, the kingdom of Kimbula trembled beneath the fury of two warring waters, the river of mercy and the sea of hunger. Lightning clawed the sky, painting the world in white and blue. The river had risen, swollen by the ocean's wrath, and every drop carried the voice of Oken, god of the deep. You dared to chain wrath, to silence sorrow, his voice boomed. But you cannot drown the sea. The people fled to the highlands. Temples flooded. Fishermen's huts vanished beneath waves that glowed an eerie turquoise, as if lit from within by imprisoned souls. And in the palace of winds, King Al-Yamid stood before his court, soaked, unbowed, and burning with resolve. Your Majesty, cried Kano, rushing into the chamber. The lower wards are gone. The market, the shrine, all under water. Nia followed him, clutching her staff. Her hair clung to her face, her breath ragged. The sea god's power grows. He draws from every river that touches the ocean. Even the mountain streams obey his call. Al-Yamid gripped the hilt of his ceremonial blade, though he knew it could not cut water. Then we call upon what he cannot command. Nia's eyes flashed. The circle of rivers. He nodded. It is time. The circle of rivers was older than Kimbula, older even than Oya. It was said to be the covenant made by the first waters, the seven spirits who gave shape to the world's rivers. They swore that as long as one river remained pure, the sea could never claim the land. But the circle had not been summoned for 1,000 years. To call it again meant risking everything, for it required a voice that the waters trusted, a voice that could bind mercy and wrath alike. Amira's voice, said Nia softly. Only she could summon them. Al-Yamid opened his palm, revealing the cracked silver shell that once carried her song. It still pulsed faintly with light. "Then I will carry her voice," he said. "She gave it to me." Nia frowned. "If you fail, the sea will not just drown Kimbula. It will erase it from memory." He looked toward the floodwaters crawling across the plain. "Then let history remember that we tried." They climbed the palace tower, where the wind roared hardest. Al-Yamid held the shell to his lips and closed his eyes. "Amira," he whispered. "You turned wrath into peace. Lend me your song once more." The shell grew warm. A soft hum filled the air, then a melody, trembling but alive, spilled forth. It rose above the thunder, carrying a rhythm older than speech. The river responded. Golden ripples broke through the stormy waters, spreading outward in circles. From each ring, light shot into the sky, joining with distant rivers, north, south, east, and west, until the horizon glowed like fire under the rain. "The circle awakens," Nia breathed. The floodwaters slowed, but only for a moment. Then Oaken's voice thundered again. "You awaken children who forgot their father." The waves surged higher, crashing against the palace steps. The flood rose so high that the river met the clouds. In its midst appeared Oaken's form, colossal, his body made of rolling water and coral, his crown a circle of foam. His eyes were deep whirlpools that swallowed light. Al-Yamid stepped onto the balcony, rain lashing his face. "Oaken, Lord of the Sea," he shouted. "This land has known your gift and your greed. But it will not bow." Oaken laughed, the sound like crashing waves. "You think love can stand against the tide?" "Love built the tide," Al-Yamid answered. "And mercy taught it to return." The sea god's smile faded. "Then prove it." The waves parted, revealing a whirlpool of impossible depth. "Enter the heart of the sea," Oaken said. "Sing your mercy there, if it can survive my hunger." Nia stepped forward. "He's testing you." "It's a trap." Al-Yamid's gaze hardened. "Maybe. But mercy was never safe." He turned to Kano. "Guard the people. Lead them to higher ground." Kano's voice broke. "Majesty. Go." Al-Yamid said. "This is my storm to face." Into the deep. The king walked into the flood. The current rose around him like hands trying to pull him back, but he kept moving. When the water reached his shoulders, he raised the glowing shell high. "Amira," he whispered. "If the sea must know mercy, then let it hear your song." He plunged beneath the surface. The world turned blue and silent. Below him, an endless abyss opened, vast, cold, and alive. The voice of the sea echoed all around. "This is where mercy ends." But Al-Yamid sang. He sang the song Amira had sung beside the river, the one that had once freed him from his curse. The words were older than speech, notes of sorrow and forgiveness intertwined. The sea shuddered. For the first time, Oaken hesitated. "This song, it belongs to her," he said. "The river spirit." Al-Yamid's eyes burned with gold. "And now it belongs to all who choose love over fear." Light burst from the shell, spreading through the water like dawn through glass. Faces appeared in the current, river spirits, old gods, ancestors, their hands outstretched in unity. "We are the circle," they said together. "And we remember." Oaken roared, the sea trembling. "No. You cannot bind me." But the light tightened around him, forming a spiral, the same symbol carved into Oya's temple. The whirlpool stilled, its fury turning into calm. As Al-Yamid floated in the light, he felt warmth against his chest, and then her voice, clear as wind over water. "You carried my song into the sea. And now the sea will carry mercy back to the world." "Amira," he whispered, his heart breaking and healing at once. "I knew you'd come. I never left." The light faded. The waters began to sink. The flood retreated, leaving behind only rippling pools that reflected the sunrise. When Al-Yamid emerged, the people of Kimbula were waiting, kneeling, praying, weeping. He stood before them drenched but unbroken, the shell still glowing in his palm. "The river and sea are one," he said softly. "And so must we be." By evening, the flood had fully receded. Fishermen found pearls on the shore, gifts of the deep. The riverbanks glowed faintly gold where Amira's spirit had touched them. Tari the prophet was gone, vanished like foam at dawn. Some said Oken had reclaimed him as his messenger. Osei, kneeling at the temple steps, looked to the sky. Mercy has taught even the sea to listen. Nia stood beside Alumide. "You faced a god and lived." He smiled faintly. "I didn't face him. I sang to him." That night, the people gathered beside the calm river. Alumide dipped his hand into the water and raised it toward the moon. "Let every drop that flows from this river remind the world," he declared, "that strength without mercy is emptiness, and mercy without courage is silence." The crowd echoed his words, their voices blending with the sound of the water. And somewhere far away, in the whisper of waves and the sigh of the wind, Amira's laughter drifted, light as rain, eternal as love. The river was calm again, but the calm was not peace, it was watchfulness. After the flood, the people of Kimbula rebuilt their homes, their songs, their laughter. But even in the quietest nights, the waves at the delta murmured like restless spirits. The sea had withdrawn, yet the deep was never truly gone. And one moonless night, when the tide turned without wind, the tide maidens rose. They came walking upon the water, their feet leaving no ripples. 3 figures, tall and radiant, their garments woven from seafoam and starlight. Their eyes glowed faintly blue, their hair drifting like living current. And around each of their necks shimmered a chain of pearls, faintly pulsing, as though alive. Their names were whispered long ago by sailors. Soma, the eldest, with eyes like midnight. Nemia, the middle one, whose voice could calm storms. Tali, the youngest, curious and kind, but with the shadow of her father in her heart. They carried no weapons. They were the weapons. "The river sings of mercy," said Soma, her voice echoing over the waves. "Let us see if mercy can resist beauty." And with that, they began their journey upriver toward Kimbula. By morning, fishermen spoke of strange visions. A woman's laughter drifting from the fog. Hands made of water brushing their faces. Songs that filled their minds with warmth and longing, songs that made them forget to row. Those who gazed too long at the shining current disappeared. Their boats were later found adrift, empty except for wet footprints leading toward the shore. When the rumors reached the palace, Nia stood at the balcony, watching the horizon darken. "They come from the sea," she said. "I can feel it," voices born of Oken's breath. King Alumide joined her, his hand resting on the railing. Then it begins again. He could see the change in the river, a silver shimmer gliding beneath the surface, as though something alive moved just out of sight. "What do they want?" he asked. Nia's eyes narrowed. "To test your heart." That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, a figure appeared by the riverbank. She was beautiful beyond words, her skin glowed like polished pearl, her eyes deep as midnight pools. She wore no crown, yet the air around her bowed. "I seek the King of Mercy," she said. The guards, dazed by her presence, let her pass without a word. When Alumide saw her, he felt the river itself hush. "I am he," he said carefully. "Who stands before me? I am Soma, daughter of Oken. My father sends me not for war, but for witness. He wishes to know what power made the sea kneel." Nia stepped forward sharply. "You carry his blood. Your presence here is no peace." Soma turned to her, smiling faintly. "Peace or not, I am here. And I bring a message: the sea no longer seeks to conquer, but to understand." Alumide's expression softened, though his eyes remained guarded. "Then speak your message." Soma's gaze lingered on him, too long, too soft. "My father says, if the river's mercy can touch the sea, then let it touch his daughters." Nia frowned. "And what does that mean?" Soma smiled sadly. "That you will be tested, not by storms, but by the heart." The next night, Nemia came. Where Soma brought silence, Nemia brought song. Her voice drifted through the city like perfume, wrapping around hearts and minds. Old soldiers forgot their grief. Children dreamed of waves that whispered their names. Even the river's flow slowed, listening. Nia found herself standing at the temple window, tears streaming down her face. Her song, it sounds like a mirror. Alyamide clenched his fists. No. It's what Amira would never sing, comfort without truth. When he stepped into the courtyard, he found Nemia sitting by the fountain, her fingers trailing through the water. Why do you tempt my people? He demanded. Nemia looked up, her expression serene. Temptation is a river's reflection. What you see depends on what you carry in your heart. He hesitated, hearing her melody linger in the air. For a moment, he saw Amira's smile in her eyes. Nemia leaned closer. Why fight what is gentle? You have carried grief long enough. Let it rest, let her rest. The shell around his neck pulsed with faint light. Amira's voice whispered from it, firm, tender. Mercy does not rest until love is safe. Alyamide drew back. You speak beautifully, he said. But your words are hollow. The air shimmered. Nemia's eyes dimmed, her beauty fading like moonlight. Then you have passed my song. The youngest tide. The final maiden, Tali, came at dawn. Unlike her sisters, she did not enter the city in glory. She wandered alone through the forest by the river, her hair tangled with leaves, her dress torn by thorns. When she reached the water's edge, she fell to her knees, sobbing softly. Alyamide found her there. Why do you weep, child of the sea? She looked up, her eyes bright with innocence and fear. Because I am not like them. I do not wish to test you. Then why come? Tali hesitated. Because I wanted to see the world she saved. Alyamide's chest tightened. Amira. Tali nodded. My father told us the river stole his heart. But when I saw her memory in the waves, I understood. The sea was not angry, it was lonely. He sat beside her quietly. The water lapped gently against the shore, as if listening. You don't have to return, he said softly. Stay, if you wish. Learn what she taught us. Tali smiled through her tears. Would your goddess allow it? Nia's voice came from behind. The goddess allows mercy. Always. The wind rose, brushing through the trees. The river shimmered gold once more. The choice of the sea. When Soma and Nemia saw their sister refuse to return, they rose again from the river. Soma's voice was sharp. Father will not forgive this. But Tali stood her ground. Then let him learn mercy as we have. The water trembled. The air thickened. And from the horizon, a vast wave rose, towering, roaring, alive. It did not strike, it waited. Then, from within it, came Oken's voice, no longer thunderous, but low, uncertain. My daughters, my tide, you defy me. Soma bowed her head. We only reflect you, Father. You taught us to move with strength, now learn to rest with peace. There was silence. The wave hesitated, then slowly began to fall back into the sea. Keep her, then, Oken said. But remember, even peace moves in circles. The sea withdrew, and the storm ended. The new river spirit. Tali stayed. In time, she became the guardian of the delta, the bridge between sea and river. Children called her the Tide Sister. She taught them to listen to both silence and sound. And in the heart of Kimbula, under the moon's watchful eye, Alyamide stood by the river once more, speaking softly to the wind. Your mercy has spread farther than you dreamed, Amira, he said. Even the sea learns from your tears. A whisper brushed his ear, the voice he had loved and lost. Then love has done its work. He smiled. Until the waters meet again. The river glowed faintly gold, and for one perfect moment, both river and sea were still, united under the goddess's peace. Many years had passed since the tides had been tamed. The kingdom of Kimbula now stretched from the mountains to the sea, a realm blessed by peace and bound by water. Farmers sang to the rhythm of the flowing river. Traders crossed bridges of carved coral that shimmered under sunlight. The people said, "So long as the river sings, Kimbula will never fall." Yet even peace, like water, carries secrets beneath its calm surface. And one night, beneath a stormless sky, the river brought the kingdom a mystery, a child born of two worlds. It began with a strange glow. The fishermen at the delta had just drawn in their nets when the sea turned to glass, silent, still, shining with silver light. From the heart of that glow came a soft cry, the voice of a newborn carried by the tide. Old Femi, the river keeper, stumbled to the shore and saw her, a baby wrapped in reeds, her skin glistening like moonlight on water. Around her tiny wrist was a single gold and pearl bracelet, and on her forehead shimmered a faint sigil, a spiral that glowed and faded like a heartbeat. Femi fell to his knees. "By the gods, a river child." The waves whispered as if answering him. "Guard her, for she carries the breath of both mercy and might." By dawn, news had reached the capital. King Alyamide, now older but still strong, rode to the delta with Nia, the high priestess of Oya, by his side. When they saw the child, wrapped in Femi's cloak, the king's breath caught. "Her eyes," he whispered. "They are gold and blue." Nia nodded gravely. "The river and the sea. She is the bridge the goddess foretold." The child cooed softly, reaching toward the flowing water. When her fingers touched the current, the river rippled in rings of light, and the sea responded with a gentle wave. Alyamide knelt beside her. "She feels them both," he said. "The tide and the current." Nia's face was unreadable. Then the world must choose what she becomes, savior or storm. The naming. That evening, the people gathered along the riverbanks to witness the naming. Priests of Oya lit golden lanterns that floated downstream, each carrying a prayer of blessing. The child was placed in the king's arms as the wind rose, soft and full of song. Alyamide lifted her toward the moon. "By the will of Oya, and by the river's mercy, she shall be called Naya, child of the two waters." The people echoed her name until the river itself seemed to hum it back, "Naya. Naya. Naya." The moment her name was spoken, the pendant of Oya, which hung on Alyamide's chest, glowed once more, brighter than it had in years. The goddess's voice, faint and far, whispered through the wind. "When the waters mingle, the world will tremble. But through her, the circle shall be made whole." Naya grew quickly, like flowing water that never rests. By her 5th year, she could calm the river with a touch and summon tiny spirals of foam in her palms. By her 10th, she could breathe underwater for hours and speak to the fish that followed her like loyal servants. And when storms rose at sea, they always broke before reaching the coast, as though bowing to her will. The people adored her. They called her the little goddess, the river's gift, the voice of the tide. But not all hearts rejoiced. In the southern provinces, whispers spread among old sea worshippers. They claimed the child's birth was a trick, that Oken's power had not been tamed, merely transformed. "Blood of sea cannot live among men," they said. "When she comes of age, the tide will rise again." The dream of Amira. On the night of her 12th birthday, Naya woke from a strange dream. She stood by the river, but it glowed gold, not blue. A woman stood before her, tall, radiant, with eyes full of kindness and sorrow. The woman smiled gently. "You are the river's child." Naya tilted her head. "Who are you?" "I am the song that carried you here," said the woman. The voice that tamed the storm. Naya's heart fluttered. "You're Amira." The spirit nodded. "And you are what comes after mercy. You are balance." Naya frowned. "But the sea still calls me. It feels angry." Amira's face grew sad. "The sea never forgets. But remember this, love that fears itself becomes hunger. You must teach the waters to trust again." The vision faded, leaving Naya awake beneath the moonlight, her bracelet pulsing with faint light. The rising unease. The next day, Naya told her father what she had seen. Alyamide listened, his heart heavy. "You dream as your mother once did," he said quietly. "But the sea is restless again. Its hunger stirs in your dreams because it stirs in truth. Nia entered the chamber. It is more than dreams, Majesty. The tides have risen out of season. The fishermen hear voices beneath the waves. Olyamide turned to her sharply. Voices. Nia nodded. Calling her name. Nia looked between them, frightened. The sea wants me. Nia laid a gentle hand on her shoulder. The sea wants to remember you. But it does not know how to love without taking. Olyamide's hand tightened around the armrest. Then it will not take her. Not while I live. The return of the deep. That night, the wind changed. The air grew heavy with salt. The horizon shimmered like a blade. And from the mouth of the delta, where the sea met the river, came a sound no one in Kimbula had heard in years, the deep, slow heartbeat of the ocean god. Oaken's voice rolled through the darkness like distant thunder. I sent my daughters. I spared your kingdom. But you took what was mine, my blood. Now the tide comes to claim it. The waves rose, taller, blacker, hungrier. The fishermen dropped to their knees, crying out to Oya. The temple bells rang in panic. And at the palace, Nia stood at her window, staring at the restless horizon. Her bracelet blazed gold and blue at once. I can hear him, she whispered. He's calling me home. The king's resolve. Olyamide gathered his captains. We cannot fight the sea with swords, he said. We will stand at the river's heart and let mercy speak again. Nia gripped her staff tightly. The gods test you once more, my king. He looked toward Nia, who stood silently beside him. No, he said softly. They test her. Nia lifted her chin, her young face calm though her eyes shimmered with fear. Then I'll go, she said. If I don't, the river will drown everyone. Olyamide's voice broke. You're just a child. She smiled, faintly, bravely. So was the river when it first met the sea. The call of destiny. At dawn, Nia walked to the riverbank alone. The people watched in silence as she stepped into the water, the waves parting for her feet. The golden and blue lights around her wrist intertwined, forming a spiral brighter than the sun. The wind rose, carrying her voice as she whispered a single name. Oaken. The sea answered. The tide surged, not in anger this time, but in longing. And as the waves rose around her, Nia's form shimmered with light. Her body dissolved into mist and foam, her voice blending with the river's eternal song. The people gasped, but the king stood still, tears glistening on his cheeks. She is not gone, Nia said softly. She has gone where mercy must, to teach even the sea how to love. The storm had long passed, yet the world seemed to hold its breath. The kingdom of Kimbula stood at the edge of a great change, one born not of fear, but of remembrance. For at the moment when Nia vanished into the waves, the river did not rage. It sang. Its voice was low and endless, the song of a mother who has let go but not lost. And across the sea, the waters began to calm, for the first time in living memory. For 3 days, no tide came. The fishermen's boats rested on still waters, their sails limp in the windless dawns. Children played by dry riverbanks, drawing circles in the mud that once carried the current. And in the palace, King Olyamide sat by the open window, staring toward the horizon. Nia entered quietly. The sea has gone quiet, she said. Even Oaken's voice is gone. Olyamide nodded. Because he listens. She's speaking to him now. Nia's brow furrowed. You believe she still lives? He turned to her, eyes glistening. She was born of mercy and might. The river claimed her, but she was made for both worlds. She is both worlds. Outside, thunder murmured far away, not in anger, but in awakening. Deep below the waves, in a realm neither mortal nor divine, Nia drifted between dream and wakefulness. Light wove through her hair like threads of moonfire. All around her, shapes of ancient power moved, creatures of coral and shadow, the oldest children of the sea. When she spoke, her voice rippled like song through the depths. Where am I? The water itself answered her, its tone both tender and vast. in the heart of what you are. You are the bridge, child of mercy and hunger. The tide bends because of you. Naya's golden eyes opened fully. Then why does it still ache? The river misses me. A shadow formed, great and regal, Oken, the sea god. His voice rolled like thunder through water. You carry my blood, he said. Yet you speak with her voice. You are both curse and cure. Naya swam closer, fearless. You called me your blood. Then teach me how to heal you. For the first time, the god hesitated. Heal me. Yes, she said softly. You rage because you are lonely. But the river never left you. It only wanted to be seen. Oken's immense form trembled. You speak as if you know my pain. Naya smiled. Because I was born from it. Above, the people of Kimbula began to worry. Without the tides, trade halted. The crops near the delta began to dry. Mercy has turned to silence, said the priests. The gods have gone too far. But Nia stood before the frightened crowd. The gods are not gone, she said. They are learning to listen. She walked to the river's edge, kneeled, and touched the water. It was cold, still, waiting. The sea holds its breath, she whispered. When it exhales, the world will change. Beneath the surface, Naya followed Oken through his vast kingdom, caverns of light and silence, halls of coral and bone. He showed her the oldest wounds of the deep, fissures where anger had once erupted, where wrath had sunk entire cities. This is what fear built, said Oken. Power without patience. Naya reached out and placed her hand on the coral. It turned gold at her touch, glowing softly. Then let patience build what fear destroyed. The light spread slowly, mending cracks that had scarred the ocean floor for centuries. Oken watched in silence. You are not sea or river, he said at last. You are change. Naya smiled faintly. Then let the waters change. Days later, the horizon brightened with strange light. The fishermen of Kimbula gasped as the sea began to move again, not with violence, but grace. The waves shimmered gold and blue, merging perfectly where the river met the tide. When the first wave touched the riverbank, the water whispered like a child's laughter. In the palace, Alyamide ran to the balcony. She's done it, he murmured. She's made them one. Nia joined him, her face glowing. Then the prophecy is fulfilled, the circle of rivers is complete. The air thickened with warmth, and a soft drizzle began to fall, not rain, but light. Every drop that touched the ground turned to tiny ripples that faded into the earth, leaving life wherever they fell. The people fell to their knees. Praise the child of two waters, they cried. The river has become the sea. At sunset, when the last light touched the waves, the water stirred one final time. From the heart of the golden current, a figure rose, radiant, cloaked in mist. Naya stepped onto the shore. She was no longer a child. Her hair flowed like water, her eyes carried the calm of ages. The bracelet around her wrist had fused into her skin, the spiral mark of balance. The crowd gasped, but Alyamide smiled through tears. Naya, he whispered, my daughter. She ran to him, and the river itself seemed to follow. I told you, she said softly, I'd come home. He held her close. And what of the sea? She looked toward the horizon, where gentle waves rolled endlessly. It dreams now, not of conquest, but of rest. Years passed, and the story of the child who became the sea spread across lands and islands. Nations sent envoys to learn from Kimbula how a kingdom built on mercy had conquered the sea without a sword. And in time, the river became sacred ground for all who sought peace. A shrine was built where the river met the tide, carved with two figures. Amira, the maiden of mercy, and Naya, the daughter of balance. Between them flowed eternal water, one stream gold, one blue, forever mingling. At the shrine's base was carved an inscription, said to have been spoken by Naya herself. When love listens to sorrow, and sorrow learns to forgive, the world will find its rhythm again. As Alyamide aged, he often walked alone to the river. The people called him the father of two waters, for under his reign, no war touched the land. He would sit by the shore at dusk, feeling the tides pulse beneath his feet. On his final day, the sky burned red and gold. The waves carried a faint hum, Amira's song, carried now by Naya's voice. He smiled, closing his eyes. The river has taught even death to be kind. When the tide came in, it carried his spirit gently away, not to end, but to join the flow. Generations later, travelers who came to Kimbula still tell the story. They say the sea never again rose in anger. That when storms gather over the horizon, the waves shimmer gold for a heartbeat, a sign that Naya still walks the depths, guiding the balance between peace and power. And when the wind blows softly through the reeds, if you listen closely, you can hear two voices singing together. Mercy saves the strong. Love saves the lost. And balance keeps them both alive. The river flows. The sea breathes. The world endures.